Education has always been one of the biggest investments families make, and the new One Big Beautiful Bill could change how we save and pay for it in a big way. If you caught episode 40, you know we walked through the bill as a whole. Well, in the next two shows, we're going to zero in on the education provisions, everything from Pell Grants and student loans to 529s and even a brand new savings vehicle. And of course, we'll talk about how these changes could ripple into your retirement planning as well. Yes, retirement. I'm Patrice Sikora, here with your host, Jim Kruzan. So, Jim, let's start with the big question. Why does education funding matter so much when what we're really talking about is retirement?
Yeah, great question. Biggest reason is it usually, for most people, happens at exactly the same time. We're funding our retirement at the same time we're typically funding for our children's college education. And if we don't, and we're trying to, let's say, pay as we go, then we're actually spending a whole lot of money on education during those very critical last few years, actually before retirement. If you're not doing any of that and you're just simply a student trying to fund their own retirement, then you've got an even bigger problem because of the hangover, let's say, with respect to student loans, maybe preventing or certainly minimizing the amount of money you can actually put away for your own retirement. So, the best plan is to plan ahead and get a better understanding of just what facilities you have, what kind of cash flow you can commit, and then build a plan accordingly.
I've heard of stories of people who've taken from their retirement funds to help fund their kids' education.
It's a compound problem. You're doing that. In many cases, you're missing out on a tremendous amount of compounding income.
Right.
If you diminish the amount of savings you're putting away to fund education, you may very well be missing out on company match and some other elements as well, all of which will diminish the amount of money you have available for retirement.
Right. Then you've got to hope whatever degree the kid is going for is going to be enough to support you in your retirement.
Well,
we'll get there much later.
That's an entirely different question altogether. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about these higher education provisions in the bill.
Yeah.
I think Pell Grants are mentioned quite prominently, aren't they?
They are. First off, there have been a number of changes with respect to all funding mechanisms, whether it's, let's refer to it as post-secondary or secondary K through 12. So why don't we start big picture, college and above, and then kind of work down. So Pell Grants, they're really great. It's a grant. It's not a loan. There's no expectation of paying it back. It's typically available for those who have diminished income capability. It's always based on your FAFSA filing, which is the financial aid form. And it's absolutely based on your student aid index. It's a course number, which then determines whether or not there's any of this monies available. Generally, it's available for folks who come from families that are within 300% of the federal poverty level. So for an individual, that's a little over $15,000. For a family, you add about $4,500-ish to each additional person. So 300%, family of four, income under $87,000, you may qualify for some degree of Pell grant money. The amount available, if you fully max it out, is about $7,395 per student this school year. And that number, in fact, can be increased even further if you're taking classes that third semester. So if you're in school the full year, that number can be increased 150 up to 150% of that, or half again as much as you would expect, taking 3 semesters as opposed to 2. Beyond that, there are a number of other really interesting things. It's broadened out how we can apply this. Traditionally, in the past, it was applied to students matriculating in a traditional 4-year school program. It was also available for those who were pursuing, let's say, a 2-year associate, but a traditional element of education. Now they're offering opportunities for workforce training, programs that would be available that would be 8 to 15 weeks, maybe as much as 600 hours of coursework. So think of all the non-degreed certifications that you could venture into post high school. That's now available as well, and that should certainly open up. And for those who maybe just have decided college isn't right for them and they're looking for some kind of a trade or some kind of a certification, this is certainly a way to participate and help receive some money for that education.
With the shortages we keep hearing about in the trades, this sounds to me like a very smart idea.
It is. There are a couple of other programs, too, that I think will really help in that regard also. We'll get to it in a few moments, but okay. 529 as well. Beyond Pell Grant, then the other course of action, if you're not just simply writing a check for tuition, is to borrow money. And there's a number of different ways that you can go about doing that. By the way, most of these changes that we're talking about really don't go into effect until next year. A lot of the loan changes don't really go into effect until mid-year next year. But the programs have increased kind of across the board. Many of the borrowing limits, which certainly helps. Let's start with the, we'll call them the non-subsidized or just the regular student loans. That is now being broken out into what we would call professional and non-professional lending. There used to be a Grad Plus program that's been completely phased out. There are elements of this one big beautiful bill where the effort is to really try to make things simpler. It's still extremely complicated, but they're getting rid of a number of these programs that ran simultaneously and a number of these acronymed programs. But in this particular case, if you are undergrad or grad, non-professional, so think of that as you're not going to med school, you're not going to law school, you can borrow up to $20,500 a year, lifetime max per student, $100,000. If you're going to professional grad school, you can borrow up to $50,000 a year, up to $200,000. One thing that they put in this bill first time is they now have a universal lifetime borrowing cap. Think of that as a borrowing cap from all sources. That is $257,500. If you hit that cap, you're capped out. You're not going to borrow any more money. There's nobody who's going to give you any more money. That limit excludes parent loan program. So your parents can still go in a hock to help with some degree of that money, but you can't borrow anymore. The effort there is to avoid that few percentage of students that rack up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and they really don't have a degree which can produce a meaningful career. And in many cases, they're kind of backward in that they would probably never have the ability to pay these things back. The last loan, as I just mentioned, is a parent loan, Parent Plus loan. That has also been increased. It's been doubled. It's now $20,000 per year per student, with a lifetime max of $65,000. So in every single case, the amount of money available has increased. The only twist here is now they put a cap on the whole thing, a universal cap.
So that it's per student.
Per student, right.
All right. So you could have more than one student.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that becomes a real big issue. The problem isn't so much the loan or the debt. The problem becomes, how do we pay this thing back? And they made a lot of changes there as well. They got rid of, or they're phasing out, I should say, the old income-driven program. That was a program where you would make payments kind of based on your adjusted gross income. It led to smaller payments, more manageable payments, and you had a potentially a 20-year payment stream, and it could be forgiven. That's getting phased out, and they're replacing it with a new program, which is called the Replacement Assistance Program, or RAP. That program is, it's going to do a couple of things. One, it now increases the runway for forgiveness. Now that runway can extend out to 30 years. You potentially, in certain career aspects where there is some opportunity for forgiveness, you might actually be making payments for 30 years before the thing gets actually forgiven. That becomes a bit of a problem. For those folks that are on any of the old programs, and there were a number of these, and I just wrote a couple of the acronyms. There was PAYE, PAYE, which was pay as you earn. There was SAVE, SAVE, which was savings on a valuable education. And then there was another program that kind of took a look at simultaneously 2 or 3 different programs, and at any given point in time, you were required to make a payment, which was the smaller of the two. Those have all been phased out, and will be phased out by, I think it's July of 2028, and that's being replaced by an income-based repayment program, IBR. What that effectively does is it's going to force people to transition. So if you're on a program, you're right in the middle of some payment program that was adopted years ago, and depending on when it was adopted, there are different phase-in rules. But your time till forgiveness may actually be extended a little bit to 20 or 25 years, but you can elect to stay on that program if that program, in effect, produced a lower payment. It's still very complicated. I could see where it can create huge problems. I mean, the idea of having a 30-year runway till forgiveness, assuming you're only making your minimum payments and have a balance at the end, for most people graduating college, that's a career. That's 30 years post-graduation. You should be ready to retire, not saddled with this kind of student debt. So you can see the big problem with respect to these loans for education. They can become very problematic.
In your opinion, do you think these programs can actually maybe help people better manage their repayment programs? Or, as you say, they still sound kind of complicated?
They are. I had to read through the regs several times, and there have been several interpretations from the time this thing first was voted on in the summer to just as recently as last month. There have been several different interpretations as to how this is actually going to work. And frankly, there are some aspects, especially with as we'll talk about in a little bit, the Trump savings program. We don't know how we're going to get to where we need to get to in some of the conversions that are available there. That stuff has just not been spec'd out yet. So it's still kind of a very fluid program. I think the real issue is I think you've got to be more strategic on taking out loans and paying for a particular degree, and really kind of looking at whether that degree has the ability to produce a career as opposed to an avocation, or as opposed to an avocation, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
All right. Well, those are some of the college level changes, but this bill goes deeper. Talk to me about K through 12.
Yeah. So K through 12, there are several different changes, improvements. The first is there's now this thing called the Education Choice for Children's Act, ECCA. Trying to get rid of acronyms. Here's a few more. In a nutshell, what it's done is it's expanded access to privately funded scholarships for private charter or religious schools. A lot of folks that are kind of pro-choice in this respect applaud this. A lot of pushback from public schools because they think it'll take certain funding, take certain elements away. Most school districts are funded based on student population, and all of a sudden, if there's now some means to send children to other schools and have some tuition offset or assistance, that might be less money flowing into the traditional school districts, which could certainly cause some problems in the future. But just to look at a couple of these, the one really cool element is there's a federal tax credit. It's called the scholarship granting for scholarship granting organizations, or SGOs. Think of it as a government program where you can give money. It's not considered a charitable deduction, but you can give money to this particular program, and you can immediately get a federal tax credit. $1,700 is the maximum credit for an individual, $3,400 filing jointly. And a credit is much better than a deduction. It's a direct reduction in your tax liability. What it does is it helps fund for a number of different programs, vocational programs. It can help with tuition fee, books, tutoring, all kinds of programs. And it's available to individuals who would qualify based on need. So not dissimilar to the Pell Grant, which has certain stipulations on who can qualify. But if you can qualify, then there's this bucket of resources that you may be able to use. When you make a gift, you're making it kind of blindly into the bucket, and then the organization determines who receives the money. And just like the Pell Grant, it's available to those who are has income as high as 300% of the federal poverty level. States have to opt into this. There are several states that kind of have their own thing. For example, the state of Michigan has the Student Opportunity Scholarship, just recently created kind of on the back of the One Big Beautiful Bill. It provides for an unlimited tax credit at the state level. So you want to give this SOS program $10,000, you can get a $10,000 state credit. Now, at some point, there's a phase in, and if you're getting a state credit, you can't get the federal credit, or vice versa, on the same amount of dollars contributed. So if this sounds interesting, if you support the cause and would like to participate in something like this, first thing you need to do is check with the state, see whether they're opting in, whether it's something that's available or not, and then consider what makes the most sense. Since the federal program isn't being established for another year, it goes into effect next year. At the end of the year, for the following year, 2027, for those in certain states that have a program today, you can certainly participate and claim the state credit without having to worry about whether you're losing anything from the feds or not. So that certainly makes good sense. Beyond that, and again, the purpose of that was to really kind of open up the opportunity of having funds available K through 12 for other types of schools beyond public. There have been a number of changes as well with respect to 529s. And the 529 changes also effectively kind of broaden these things out. One of the big changes with the 529 is they broaden out the idea of eligible expenses. It's now curriculum, books, instructional material. You can pay tutors, fees for standardized testing, all those charges if you want your kid to take the ACT or SAT, tutoring in class or at home with a certified instructor. Other programs are available for students who have particular disabilities. And there's also fees for dual enrollment. So if you are taking high school classes, but taking a college class, those fees to provide that instruction can be picked up as well. At the same time, it broadens out apprentice programs, credentialed programs. So there are various things: welding, HVAC, mechanics. So think of a lot of the technical programs in high schools. You can use some of this 529 money for those opportunities. As far as withdrawals, pulling money out of a 529 to support educational expenses, K through 12, that's also been doubled. It was $10,000 a year. It's now $20,000 a year. But I think the biggest benefit, as I see it, is with respect to FAFSA and FAFSA filing. Now, if you have a 529 and it's owned by your grandparents, not your parents, but your grandparents, none of that money is reported on FAFSA. So it does not reduce the amount of FAFSA benefit you might get, Pell Grant or otherwise. So that's a big, big plus. So for those families who expect to get some help via financial aid by filling out a FAFSA, plan ahead. And if there is an opportunity and an interest in establishing 529, you might want to have some serious conversation about who should own that account. It might very well make sense for mom and dad to put it in one of their parents' name, even though they might be funding it themselves, just because it removes a big chunk of those assets and will probably increase the award given to the child as a result of that. So that's really something to consider. Again, going back to the whole adage, it pays to plan, right?
It does indeed. All right, Jim, we're going to end part 1 here. We've covered quite a bit of information. As you say, it's a little dense. So how can people reach you if they've got questions? Yeah,
the easiest way is just to reach us on our website, Kaydan, Kaydan, wealth.com. And we'll be sure to, we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Absolutely. So this is where we are going to end part 1, folks, but we do have a part 2 coming. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe to this podcast so you know when that one's ready, and you'll be able to get that one as well. And we will be talking about, again, education and the one big beautiful bill. If you found this episode helpful, as I say, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, share it with someone who could benefit, and follow @Kaydan Wealth on social media. Let us know what you think in the comments. Your feedback and topic suggestions help us improve and make a bigger impact. Thanks for supporting our show.
Thank you for listening to The Retirement Engineer with Jim Kruzan. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.kaydanwealth.com or give us a call at 800-638-6900. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of Jim Kruzan and this episode's guests, not necessarily those of Kaydan Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.